So, collective intelligence in digitally collaborating teams. So, collective intelligence and the question whether this concept exists when groups collaborate. On the top of this slide, we have a brief summary of the history and definition of collective intelligence. Intelligence is an individual characteristic, as we have learned, but groups may also exhibit intelligence called collective intelligence. The traditional understanding of collective intelligence is the wisdom of crowds. So when a lot of people work together, acting as a crowd, they may be very intelligent. For example, asking a lot of people what the exact weight of an elephant is would help to really gain the exact weight of an elephant, because it may center around some mean which is quite close to the real weight of an elephant. However, a very new interpretation of collective intelligence is a group's ability to perform consistently across a wide variety of tasks. This interpretation is quite new since it was developed by Anita Woolley and her team in 2010. So, groups high in collective intelligence would consistently perform well, while groups low in collective intelligence would consistently perform poorly. The authors in 2010 did the following. They conducted an experiment with a lot of people and they gathered these people into groups. So it was a real experiment performed in the laboratory, and the people in groups acted face to face. So it was physical groups, so physical teamwork. In each group there were 3 members. And these groups worked on different tasks. To be precise, they worked on 5 different tasks, at least in one study of the authors. To measure collective intelligence, the authors measured the performance scores on each task and performed an exploratory factor analysis. And they found that in these performance scores, there was an underlying factor, a single dominant factor, which explained more than 30% of variance in the performance scores of a group across these different tasks. And it was interesting that this collective intelligence factor, or C as we have already learned, was not correlated with the intelligence of individual team members, but it was correlated with the proportion of females in a group, with the distribution of speaking terms as well. So the proportion of women has the following explanation. Women are very sensitive, and sensitivity was also positively correlated to collective intelligence. This study, which was published in 2010 in a very established scientific journal, has been replicated really a number of times. At a certain point in time, we found 11 research papers comprising 18 studies in total, and some reported that they found collective intelligence, but some did not. It was mostly found in face-to-face contexts. So when people collaborate in person, prior research more or less found evidence, empirical evidence of collective intelligence. But also prior research found very disparate results whether collective intelligence transcends media and emerges in virtual collaboration contexts. So to find out whether collective intelligence exists in virtual contexts, we, meaning Professor Dr. Henna Gimpel and myself, conducted a study to find out who's right, or at least whether collective intelligence transcends media and can be found, as I said, in virtual settings. So, before we provide some details on our experiment, which we also conducted in a laboratory, I want to provide some underlying theories. So So first, there's the theory of media synchronicity. It basically says that media such as video collaboration, audio collaboration, or text chat, meaning chatting, have some properties which support group work in a certain way. Synchronicity thereby refers to the extent to which these properties result in group members working synchronously. Synchronicity thereby is especially high when people collaborate via face-to-face, which is not virtual, obviously, or collaborate via video-based communication. It is somewhat in the middle when people just talk on the phone, so when we only have an audio channel, and synchronicity is very low when people just send text messages. There are two key properties which determine the level of synchronicity. First, convergence, and second, conveyance. Convergence refers to conveying information, creating a common understanding, while conveyance refers to process information, building a mental model. So that's the media synchronicity theory. On the other side, there are tasks a group has to perform. There are a lot of taxonomies describing team tasks. The most established taxonomy in the field of collective intelligence is the McGrath Task Complex. It captures 8 task types which are categorized into quadrants. And I want to note that each task needs a certain degree of synchronicity in order to perform high on this task. So stated differently, each task needs a certain level of conveyance and convergence activities. For example, the task brainstorming is primarily a conveyance task. Or, for example, preparing a party is primarily a convergence task. So when people collaborate via a certain media, it may be that this media doesn't allow this group to have as much convergence as they would have need in order to perform this task. So let's see how our experiment looked like. We collected data in a laboratory in Germany at a German university. So on the left-hand side, you see some impressions of the laboratory. Here I provide some key data on the experiment. We had 600 individuals, which we randomly divided into 200 groups of 3 members each. They were paid for their performance, so they were also incentivized, meaning they got a stack of money, but when they performed high, they were able to gain additional money. The experiment took a bit longer than 2 hours, and the participants earned on average 30 euros. They collaborated via different media. So we had different collaborations contexts called treatments. Some groups collaborated via face-to-face. So they were put into team rooms and solved the tasks. Others collaborated via video, others via audio, and some via text chat collaboration channels. Overall, they performed 8 tasks as defined by the McGrath task types. We had a between subject design, meaning that each group stayed with its communication channel and performed these 8 tasks in their communication channel. We published an analysis plan and a statistical analysis plan before we started collecting the data. This process is called pre-registration, and it's often necessary, or at least valued, in order to show that you have a plan how you want to analyze data once you collected it. That's a very rigorous proceeding and very valued as you make your thoughts before you start a survey or an experiment, and it hinders from, well, digging in the data or trying to find significant results when there are none, for example. So you make a plan and you make sure that you stay with your plan, and that's a very good channel to do so, and as I said, very valued in the research community. So we implemented this pre-registration via writing a paper. We postulated all our hypotheses, which are also in the paper, which we wrote afterwards. And our underlying key thought was that collective intelligence may exist in a single dominant factor structure, as initially found by we and colleagues in 2010, because that was the dominant thinking in research or in prior research. Our alternative hypothesis was that collective intelligence might not exist in every virtual collaboration channel, because, as we have said, it varies in its support of conveyance and convergence processes. So we hypothesized that in some channels, in some communication channels, collective intelligence might have not a single dominant factor structure, but a multiple factor structure. This was the alternative hypothesis. And on the left-hand side, you see a very complex picture. This basically is the kind of decision tree stating the statistical analysis which we decided to conduct in case some events happen. And bold, you see the way we went when we collected the data, and we went from one event to another on the basis of results. So we did some analysis, we found the results, and then we defined in the pre-registration plan how to proceed until to the end point. So there were 3 steps involved in this analysis plan, and you don't have to know these steps by heart for the exam, but we can discuss this, or at least the stages in the live sessions. So here are the findings. We found that media is a kind of a boundary condition of collective intelligence, meaning it enables or inhibits the emergence of collective intelligence in virtual groups. So we have several contributions here. First, the empirical contribution. We found that collective intelligence has this established single dominant factor structure in face-to-face and video collaboration. So in these 2 kinds of collaboration, we found what Woolley and colleagues found in 2010, that groups exhibit a certain collective intelligence factor which allows them to perform consistently across a wide variety of tasks, across 8 tasks, because we had 8 tasks in our experiment. In the other 2 collaboration settings we employed in our experiment, we found something different. We found that collective intelligence has a 2-factor structure. So there is not this one dominant factor coming up, but there are 2 factors. The one factor where more or less convergence tasks load on, and the other factor where more or less conveyance tasks load on. So performance was kind of split. There were groups performing or doing tasks with high conveyance requirements very well, and other groups doing tasks with high convergence requirements very well. So we found, and that's a theoretical contribution, media as a boundary condition of collective intelligence. And one might reconceptualize collective intelligence as a multidimensional concept, at least in some collaboration contexts. There are also some practical contributions. When, for example, the practitioner wants their teams to perform consistently well across a wide variety of tasks and rely on the team's past performance, They should let their teams collaborate primarily via video or face-to-face collaboration channels, because then we have this one dominant collective intelligence factor. When practitioners want their groups to, for example, perform a variety of convergence tasks or conveyance tasks, they can also let the groups collaborate via audio or text chat channels, because we there found this two-factor structure. So we conclude in this working paper, which I presented here, that collective intelligence is a more complex phenomenon than past research would suggest, manifesting in a single factor in some group collaboration settings, but not in others.